I appreciate his approach in the legislature. He called it the Roach approach. He's always meticulous, well studied, and I appreciate him adding a voice to every conversation here in this body. Help me to welcome my colleague of this minority coalition, the People's Voice, Senator Trigenza Roach.
Thank you, Mr. Minority Leader. Good afternoon to everyone present. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Good afternoon to my colleagues who will now comprise the Minority Coalition Caucus of the 32nd Legislature. And thank you also very much for being here with us this afternoon. In 2012, I was first elected to the legislature, and I was re-elected in 2014. And in each instance, I was not a member of the majority. So in the 30th legislature, we had 5 non-aligned senators, but we did not have enough stuff in common, I believe, to have joined together. And in the 31st legislature, there were 4 of us, and I think the same characteristic applied. I really didn't think that there was any glue that joined us together. So I'm very pleased that members of the Democratic Party, the Independent Citizens Movement, and independent senators have come together to form this Minority Caucus. And I just wanted to share with you why I thought it important to become a part of this body in now my 3rd term, where in the 2 previous legislatures I have been unaligned. And I think it's really because, as my colleague pointed out, yes, we understand that there is a majority caucus, and we understand that that majority caucus will take charge in organizing the body and taking responsibility for the staff and some of the other related issues. But you cannot have an unchecked majority. And that is what this country stands for. This is a republic. And in a republic, there are protections for the rights of people who are not majority. And I already see signs that we ought to look for what are potential abuses of power. And so I believe that a single voice, yes, every single voice is important. But when you join those voices together, you have a much more effective force at presenting a diverse and in sometimes an opposing point of view. And I think those are essential things. I'm pleased that my colleagues who spoke before pointed out that this is not a caucus simply to oppose the majority. That would be a total and an absolute waste of time. This is going to be a caucus that is going to take advantage of the talents that are embodied in the 5 persons who make it up, and to bring positive ideas forth. We are discussing at present ideas that impact agriculture, that impact tourism, that impact education, and we are hopeful that when we bring these ideas forth, both our majority caucus in the legislature and ultimately our governor will be supportive of good ideas that will move this territory forward, just as we will be supportive of good ideas when they come from the majority caucus or when they come from the governor. But I do believe that a voice, in this instance, a minority caucus, which is provided for in the rules of the legislature. It's not like it's a new item. It is provided for in the rules, and all we have done is organize consistent with the rules that have been adopted by the 32nd legislature. So I look forward to working with my colleagues. I look forward to us having the support of you and the public, and know that we are open to incorporating your suggestions and your ideas in what we pursue as a legislative agenda as well. Thank you so very much for being here.
The Roach approach. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the public media, I have seen this person in politics.
Specifically, the question that was placed to the voters of the territory in a referendum, and that is whether we should make steps towards the legalization of marijuana for medicinal purposes. That is the bill before the legislature. And I think we ought to be very careful in discussing it that no measure has been brought forward that deals with the legalization of marijuana for recreational use in addition to that. I did want to add a comment, and of course I support fully the move to provide for the legalization of marijuana for medical purposes. And I think there is literature that suggests the benefits of cannabis in different instances. I know epilepsy is one of the areas in which it has been used. Now, I have a slightly different view of my colleague with regard to the media and these meetings, and I just want to be on the record as saying that because I have a career in journalism, some of you may know or may not know. And I believe that it is a different situation when you are formulating a proposal. I think there's a fine line. I think when you're trying to get competing and different opinions about a particular subject, I think the reach as far as getting input into that. But I'm sure that especially the members of the media are well aware we've had discussions on this floor, and I have been one of those persons who have said, in response to the suggestion that we have meetings off the record to discuss A or B or C, that the legislature is the place for the vetting of bills. And we should be very careful that we don't undermine that process. When, in the instance of the first meeting at Government House, the Chamber of Commerce from St. Croix, the Chamber of Commerce from St. Thomas, senators, members of the governor's cabinet, the governor himself. That bill that was the focus of that discussion had been vetted on the floor of the legislature. And I believe that it was appropriate to all of the interested parties to be brought back onto the floor of the legislature and continue the discussion. It is in the benefit of it is in the public's interest and in our interest that these discussions take place in public. Because if you have 10 senators go to a meeting with the governor and then we come out, it's almost, you're almost left with a conclusion that when the bill comes, those 10 people are going to support it. And the discussion about how people arrive at their positions and the issues that they think are important with regard to any public issue should be in the public domain. And I feel very strongly about that, and I wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Roach. Good point well made. Any other questions? You're having your day, aren't you? I think you might have turned it up, please.
Is this one, because I did think that further vetting of the bill should take place here. And ultimately, I decided not to attend the meetings. The third meeting, which was yesterday, I got the first notice of that from Senator Sanis when we were speaking in the hallway. And when he referred to an email, which I subsequently checked, and there was an email that came in to my email address from an assistant to the governor. It was Wednesday, and I'm almost sure it said 10:33. It could be 10:38, but I think it was at about that, for the meeting at 1 o'clock the next day, Thursday. And one of the reasons why I chose not to attend the meetings, I haven't attended any of them. So one of the reasons why I chose not to attend that meeting is, one, again, not having enough preparation. I mean, it's 10, if we give him credit for sending it out at 10-something Wednesday morning, it's for 1 p.m. the next day. That's one. But the core of my reason for not going has to do with the State of the Territory address. Because by law, when we are sworn in, the governor is to present the State of the Territory address at the first session of the legislature, which is that day. Now, the Senate agreed to postpone it, again, not us, but to postpone it to the 23rd, right? And now the governor has asked for it to be postponed to the 30th. And so it was my thought that all of these matters that were being discussed, especially including the bond rating, all impact the state of the territory. And why are we spending time discussing it privately when it should be the substance of the statement that you're supposed to present to the public in any event? And so my thought was press conferences, meetings, etc., put the emphasis on getting the state of the territory together, that public message, and putting it out for everybody to discuss it. Now, I don't want to appear holier than thou because with the prior administration, Governor DeYoung would ask senators to come to the to Government House to discuss issues. We went to Government House, for instance, to discuss the proposed sale of the Hovenza refinery when that first came up, and the agreement, the proposed agreement, was the subject of that conversation. Off my head, at the top of my head, I can't really recall. I've gone to meetings with Governor Mapp to discuss the fiscal situation in general. I don't have a recollection whether there have been specific bills that we could be accused of vetting. The most recent meeting that I attended in the 31st legislature was where we had a discussion because Senator Millin Young has a proposal on tax relief. I have one on tax relief. The Lieutenant Governor's office wanted to weigh in on their submission of a bill, and so we had a meeting and we discussed those ideas. But I do firmly believe that there should be for vetting of bills in public. I think it protects the senators because people know where you stand and people know why you have reached the conclusions that you have. And it serves both our interests and the interests of the public as well. That's my position on it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. I think I've been very clear my position on that issue. It's what the Organic Act says. And in the very same rules of the 32nd Legislature, it also addresses what is a public meeting. So that's very clear. And within the organic...
Supported by security when we go to public events that keep the public at bay. And I think because of that, we are always having direct, I'm sure the governor has his, but it is constant. And I think that is why it is important for us to ensure that this body is treated with respect, because we are directly responsive to the community all the time. And I think disrespect of the legislature is disrespect of the public, because we get all of the complaints live and direct. And I think that's a special responsibility. There's no insulation between us and them. When I drive out of this yard, or I walk across the Vendors Plaza, or to Emancipation Garden, or whatever, people want to know, what about this pothole? What about this particular thing? What about this incident? And that I believe is an appropriate response, because that's who I feel I'm speaking of when I make certain requirements in terms of how I am treated as a member of this body, by the members of this body, as well as by the other branches of government.
Are there any other burning questions? I think we have extended ourselves fair enough. We want to be open. We want to hold quarterly meetings with the public, and the media can attend and ask us about our progress, our initiatives, etc., our response to current events. That's what we want to do for the public. We know the media has an issue and concerns with transparency.